How do you navigate having a faith which strongly prioritises generosity and giving in a world where so much focus is put on your own wealth and your own success?
On today's episode, founder of Girl Got Faith, Emma, helps us unpack the tricky topics of life, money and faith.
We ask Emma how you can reconcile your faith with capitalism and whether faith can really help you to find a purpose, or whether you've got a purpose anyway. Investing is just one way that you could take care of your future finances by giving your money more potential to grow.
With Wealthify, you can start investing with as little or as much as you like.
And luckily for you, Wealthify is offering all Money Unfiltered listeners the chance to get an extra £50 boost to your investment pot.
You can pick a risk level that's right for you and know how much you're paying for your investments to be looked after by their team of experts, thanks to their clear and affordable fees.
So if you've been thinking about starting to invest and you've been putting it off, then now could be the perfect time to make the leap.
So what do you need to do? Simply open a Wealthify plan and invest £50. Then, after 12 months of the money being invested, Wealthify will add another £50 to your plan. How great is that? Now for the legal bit. T's and C's obviously apply, and this offer is open to new Wealthify customers only.
It will only be available to the first 500 qualifying customers. And you'll also need to claim the offer via the dedicated landing page and pay £50 into your plan by the 31st of December 2022.
Head to the show notes for the link to claim this offer and read the full T's and C's, or head to wealthify.com/Money Unfiltered.
And remember, with all investing, your capital is at risk and you could get back less money than you put in. Wealthify is also authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority.
This is a topic that I am very interested in, and we've actually wanted to cover this for a long time, but we haven't found quite the right guest, so we are thrilled to have you here. And I wanted to start by asking you, how do you navigate having a faith which encourages generosity and giving at the core in this secular society which seems to be all about self-interest and making money and wealth for ourselves?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, because that is something that I ask myself a lot, like that kind of tension between like, how do you live as someone with faith and live out your faith in a practical way, not just have it as something that is only personal to you and it doesn't impact anyone around you. But then, yeah, it's very at odds with a lot of things in the world. But then I think in terms of like generosity and giving, generally, I feel like as human beings, we know that's healthy. Regardless of if you've got faith or not, you know that actually the principles of not being tight with what you've got, but actually being generous and things come back to you. And that, I think we all know that deep down, but yeah, we're not necessarily encouraged or pushed to do that. But I would say probably more for me, what I find hard to navigate with my faith against kind of the world is the attitude that you have to not be kind of like me first, how you can serve others above yourself and how you can, I don't know, not push yourself to the front. But I think we are in like a bit of a dog-eat-dog world where it feels like you have to do that. And you're like, okay, but if I don't push myself to the front, then I'm not going to be anywhere. Like nobody's making way for me kind of thing. So that I feel like is probably more the tension for me, I guess, especially as a woman as well.
Of course, yeah.
But yeah, no, I think in terms of generosity and giving, I feel like we all know deep down that that's actually like a healthy principle.
I mean, you touched on it there, but you have a business, Girl Got Faith, and you work for yourself, and the world of entrepreneurship is often obsessed with this idea of more and more success, like bigger, better, more money, more wealth, all of those flashy things. And I guess I'd love to know if you have found that your faith has influenced how you see success as an entrepreneur and as a business owner.
Yeah, I think it probably has. It's also to do with the type of business that we are. So we're technically a non-profit organisation, and I wonder if it's similar for a lot of non-profits and charities, with that kind of the pursuit of well, like, what are you pursuing? Because are you pursuing impact, or are you pursuing financial return and building wealth and all that kind of stuff? And I don't think either are bad, but I think it's really hard to get an equal balance with the two. And actually you do kind of need both. So I think, yeah, I've often looked at success as just impact. And I'm like, no, it just, as long as we're reaching the right people, as long as people are getting the message, sure, and as long as people are being encouraged and helped, and we're creating resources for youth workers and all of this kind of stuff, I feel like, oh, we're doing a great job. And I genuinely do feel that. But as time's gone on, I've realized that if we don't also look at the finances and we look at having some sort of steady, stable income, that impact doesn't last, because it can only last as long as you have money to finance it. So I think we do definitely need to bring in a bit more of that business mindset and not see it as a taboo or something that is at odds with your mission almost, but actually they can go hand in hand. And I think that's something that I'm definitely trying to learn more about and balance, because I think it's so easy to just solely focus on impact and see that as your only success measure. But yeah, I guess you also need healthy, sustainable finances too.
I'd love to just talk a little bit more about kind of work and the work we do. You mentioned burnout. I mean, we hear it everywhere at the moment. There are so many of us that work mainly to pay the bills and, you know, make a living and look after ourselves. I think it's always felt like such a luxury to do work that you love, but I think more and more the generations coming through, we don't just want to work for a paycheck. We really do want to find meaning and purpose in our work as well. I definitely, and I know pretty much all of my friends, like everyone wants to find something that feels meaningful to them. How can faith play a role in helping us find meaning and purpose in our work and lives?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've actually been thinking about that a bit recently, because I think recently we've gone through a boom of entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Where everyone, it was like the mass exodus of people leaving their 9-to-5s and being like, I'm going to be an entrepreneur, I'm going to start my own business. Da, da, da. And then that's been a good few years now.
Yeah.
And then you're seeing people being like, I'm
Yes.
going to go back to my 9-to-5 because
I miss the office.
Like I need the community of an office, or I need the structure of a work day. Or you end up kind of, when you work for yourself, you don't work 9-to-5. You work, I don't know, 9 till midnight, whatever. You got to do what's got to be done.
On a good day.
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's definitely, I'm seeing like a shift in terms of our attitudes towards, and I think we're exploring and we're trying all these different things as a generation. But then I think from a faith perspective, for me, there's kind of foundational piece that I have, that I feel like my purpose isn't something out there that's floating around waiting for me to come and find it one day. I'm not on a search for it. I feel like I've been born with purpose, and I believe all of us have been born with a purpose, and that it's not something that you just randomly are going to stumble across, but that actually your purpose is you. It's the fact that you're alive right now. It's that you're here, and that your purpose can just come out through anything you do. So it brings a lot more freedom to know that you could work as an accountant, you could work in Sainsbury's, you could work as a teacher, or you could be an entrepreneur, and you can live out your purpose through that. Because I think we often mistake purpose as a job title or a position, but actually it's more the kind of person that we are. And for me as a Christian, I believe that it's to bring glory to God, and that's probably going to sound crazy to people, but I think you can do that in so many different ways. Through I guess just the way that you are generous and the way you love others, and your perspective in the world, and what you feel you can bring to the world that reflects something of God. And I think for me, I've realized I can do that in so many different ways, and it's brought me a lot of freedom in realizing that I don't have to, there's not like a one-way route through my life. It's not that Girl Got Faith is the only thing that I'm ever going to do, and I've got my purpose, and oh my gosh, I can never let it go. Because then you attach your entire identity to what you do. But actually, we're human beings. We evolve, we grow, different things happen in our lives, we have different experiences. And our purpose, I believe, can still be given and poured out into so many different areas of our lives.
Wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, I think that's so interesting, because you're spot on there, where you said that I think so many of us and I've definitely fallen into this, think that we have to go out and find our purpose, that, like you said, it's like floating around.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how am I ever going to like catch this purpose? Like, how do I know when I found it, if that's what I'm looking for? But actually, maybe we need to hold the mirror up and actually see that we've already got purpose more.
Yeah, exactly. What does it feel like to fulfill your purpose? I don't know if anyone could ever really answer that. I guess maybe if you get to the end of your life and you look back, you could be like, oh, I don't know, I lived with purpose, or I fulfilled my purpose. But I don't think anyone would look at that as like one specific job that they did. So yeah, a little while ago with the Queen's passing, you could see maybe people would be like, oh wow, she really like lived out her purpose, which was her duty to serve the nation. Yeah. But then actually maybe she also saw a part of her purpose as being a mum and a grandma. And an owner to her little dogs and her pony kind of thing. Like, that can also be so purposeful for someone. And so yeah, I don't think it's necessarily one way through life that is just what's going to give us our purpose.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, something as well that just kind of made me think is talking about the late Queen. She was very vocal about her faith. And I think that is something that is potentially like becoming increasingly less common, at least in this country. I recently came back from Spain and it's everywhere there. Like, they are very overt in their faith. And it's something that we just don't seem to see here as much. And how have you found it being somebody who is a business owner, where your business is to do with your faith, and somebody who talks so openly about their faith in a world where that isn't actually that common anymore, at least in this country?
Yeah, I think it's definitely seen as a niche, which is funny because, I guess we technically live in a Christian country. Yeah. But actually, the percentage of people that are Christians, and even within our audience, we're speaking predominantly to teenage girls, you're kind of narrowing it down and down and down. So it does feel very much like you're going way against the tide, because not that many people are speaking to young people in terms of value and encouragement and that kind of thing, and especially girls as well. And then adding the faith element, it does make it a very, very small audience. It doesn't make sense for that to be what we've positioned our whole business around, because it's like, well, how's that profitable? How is that even worth it? Is there even enough girls? Have you reached them all already, kind of thing? Yeah. And I always just go back to that idea of like, why did I start it in the first place, and why did I even have this idea? It's because I was that girl. I was the girl growing up in school, feeling like the only Christian in the entire universe, not knowing how to communicate my faith to my friends, not knowing if I should, not knowing if they thought I was going to be weird, or if they thought I was judging them, or like, I don't know. I just had so many questions when I was growing up. And thankfully I had my sisters who would kind of encourage me and help me along that journey. But I realized as I got older, not everybody has that. Not everybody has those sisters. So I wanted to kind of create a platform that could be a big sister to those girls who are exploring faith or do have questions and want answers. But yeah, I think then you've got a very narrow audience, and it doesn't really make sense to the world as to why you would bother even trying to create a whole platform around that. But actually, if it means something to you, then it's worth doing.
I actually want to ask you quite a different question. And this is, again, about the Bible, testing your knowledge, but not too hard, because I want to talk about a very common theme that we all know, which is the creation story. And I got this because I watched a YouTube video on was it Belle? Who was on your YouTube talking about God creating man, Adam, and then he created Eve. And the translation in the Bible, and I imagine they're all a bit different, but the literal translation is that God's created Adam, and he then says, it's not good for this man to be alone. I will create a suitable helper for him. And to me, and I can imagine many other women, that sounds a bit like, oh, are we just here to help men? It doesn't necessarily fit with like the feminism narrative that's pretty popular today. But have I and anyone else who would share that kind of thinking, have we got it completely wrong? Can you just tell us a bit about how you actually interpret that? Because you are also a woman, and I imagine you don't feel that you've just been put here as a helper for your husband and all the men.
So first of all, I think we really should bring Belle here. So Belle, who made that video, she's a doctor in theology.
Wow.
Like, she's actually I didn't even know you could get a doctorate in theology.
I did.
It's amazing.
Yeah, amazing.
But yeah, so she breaks it down really well in that video, talking about the actual meaning of the word helper and how we've interpreted it, and we translate it very different to, I think, the original meaning or the original intention. But yeah, definitely, oh my gosh, I think the church doesn't, as like an institution, doesn't always do the best job at changing that narrative or helping people's idea be any different, and it often does perpetuate that same idea that women are less, or women are helpers, or just that men are the number one kind of thing. And definitely growing up in church my whole life, that didn't sit well with me. And I guess as a younger woman, you don't necessarily think about how you could challenge that, or I don't know, you take a lot on as like, okay, well, that's just what it says, so that's just what I should do. But definitely it's never been something that I've been like, yep, do you know what, totally agree, I'm just a helper, like whatever. It's always been something within me, and it might just be my character, my personality, that is like, no, that's not enough for me. I don't want to just be a helper, that's not what I'm here for. But no, I think there's definitely a misinterpretation, I would say, in my personal opinion. And I've been watching this series called The Chosen. It gives a look at Jesus's life when he was on the earth, but it's really, really well done. And you see in that the value that Jesus placed on women. And I think in the Old Testament, so like the first bit of the Bible before Jesus came, there's a lot that is very contextual for that time and that part of the world as well, in terms of the position that women hold, the laws that and restrictions that are against women and things like that. But actually Jesus did come and show a new way, and there's so many different ways that he did that, and you actually see it so confrontingly in this series that I'm like, oh my gosh, Jesus actually really valued women. The fact that one of the first miracles was this woman getting delivered of like loads of demons, but it was like a woman. He came to do that to a woman first. Then he had Mary as like one of his followers who was so close, and he trusted her to share his story. When he died and was resurrected, he appeared first to a woman. And you think, if we're meant to just see women as helpers and secondary and less than, then why did Jesus make so much effort with women?
It's really, really funny that you say that from the New Testament, and with Jesus coming in, there's so many of these examples of him really showing major value of women, because as I said to you before, I'm from a Jewish background and we just don't have the New Testament. And I found growing up, I didn't go to a religious school. There weren't many Jewish kids at my school, like only a couple, but I did go to like a Jewish version of Sunday school where I got some education every Sunday. I used to hate it because I felt it was boys and girls separate, and the boys would learn to read and write, and the women, we would learn how to cook and clean, and we would go to like the rabbi's wife's house and learn to make bread and clean a house properly and like keep it for our husbands to be happy. And I was absolutely furious, as you can imagine. And I think it's very entrenched into, and it's not all across the Jewish culture, but my experience of it as a young person anyway, and I wonder if that is because we are missing that New Testament. But I've found, at that age, I was like, well, I just reject this completely. And like I said to you, as we all do, like I've been on a bit of a journey. And I think now what I feel is that it's nuanced. You don't have to accept it in its entirety or reject it in its entirety. You can take what you want and use it in a way that feels right for you. Have you had a similar sort of relationship with your faith and with Christianity?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's the understanding that we are all humans who are interpreting historical texts.
Yeah.
And everybody looks at it through their own lens, through their own context, through their own prejudice. If historically we've had a lot of male teachers. It filters down, doesn't it, in terms of as we get more and more women exploring the Bible and more women in positions of leadership and stuff like that, I think we do start to see a bit more of a nuanced view of what these kind of religious texts are actually saying and what they mean, or people just even bothering to explore, like, why, if you're a man, why would you bother to explore what the word helper actually meant? Because you're like, helper, great, oh my gosh, amazing. Yeah. But then as there's more and more women now, like Belle, who does stuff for Girl Got Faith in terms of just exploring theology and really going hard with learning about it, that actually we get people who are now like, oh, okay, I'm not actually super satisfied with that word helper, so like, let me just try and understand where it comes from. Got to understand the context of the history of religion, and that we all are looking at it through our own lens. And I think that can give us a bit of grace as well for maybe some of the people who have taught us in the past or whatever, that we felt have been a bit kind of one-sided or just brushed over things that they thought didn't matter. But actually, I think if something matters to you, it matters to God. And I think we can go to God with our questions and we can ask and we can explore for ourselves. And I think that's the beauty of things like the Bible, the internet, all of these things where we can learn and explore for ourselves. And I think, we definitely shouldn't just sit back and be like, okay, well, someone's told me that, so I'll accept it. I was even saying to my friends recently how I feel like preachers in church should have a disclaimer before they speak that says, just to let you know, I'm going to preach from the Bible and I'm going to preach a scripture, but it's from my own interpretation, or it's my own perspective.
I could not agree more. Yes.
I think just even that little disclaimer just reminds you, because people put in their own like personal stories and their reflections, but it's your reflection.
And there's an element of responsibility there as well, because I think if they said that, then the person listening also will realise that they have a responsibility to interpret it for themselves as well, rather than just relying purely on this person's interpretation of it.
It's so interesting as well, because I think that actually, like, when you think about it in so many different ways, with faith, with money, with all sorts of topics, women have been in this sphere for such a short amount of history. And it's like we expect in 2022, like, everyone to have figured everything out and it to all be 50-50. Women have not been able to work in the church for, it's less than 100 years.
Exactly.
It's like the same with money. Women have been able to have like their own bank accounts for less than 100 years. Why are we surprised sometimes that we're still a little bit behind where we want to be? We're expecting 6 billion people in the globe to have caught up in that amount of time when we've got a history of like thousands of years. That word like grace, I think, is so key, and allowing people to kind of make those mistakes, or what we maybe consider to be mistakes in their interpretation or their view of the world, which are very timely for when they were taught about it by this group of men, because there were no women that could do it.
Yeah, exactly.
And I also think that's actually such an empowering message, because it's like we need the time and the space to figure it out for ourselves, to make the mistakes, to examine it, not just to take it on face value. This is what the men have told us, so all right, we accept, but actually to like really carve out our own way. It's like this is our opportunity in a way.
And that's why it's so important that you've got podcasts like this and things like Girl Got Faith, where we're putting in all of this time and effort to be like, no, do you know what, we're going to really sow into women here, and we're going to give like a bit of a leg up to all of these women that we know we're all a bit behind, but we're going to do like an express course to get to where we want to be. And it's that thing of just not being satisfied with how it has been, but putting in the work to make a difference for the future generations. And I think that's so important.
I want to ask another question, which is just going back to, you said a little while ago, and I wanted to pick up on it, that your kind of idea of success really is bringing glory to God. I totally get that. And you said it sounds crazy. I don't think it sounds crazy at all. But what I do want to know is, how do you translate that practically? So, for example, let's say you're in a job and you're fed up of it and you think, I just don't want to do this job anymore. How do you translate bringing glory to God to what is my next move?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question.
I think so many of us love the concept of having faith as a guide, but don't see how it can translate practically.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's a big hurdle and an obstacle. There's just so many words, so many random words and things in the Bible, like glory, forgiveness, salvation. And you're like, great, but what do I mean? So yeah, no, definitely that is a good question. I would say for me, there was like a writer, it might have been C.S. Lewis, but it might not have been. So maybe don't quote me on that.
We'll check.
Do you know what? I don't know if it was him. Or maybe it was John Piper. Very different people.
Go with the right.
But you know, whatever. A writer who wrote about this kind of idea of bringing glory to God and how it's like basically being a mirror image of God, and that it's like holding up a mirror to yourself and seeing if you can just reflect something of the nature of God in all that you do. And that comes down to understanding the nature of God, which is loving, kind, generous, patient, gracious, all of these different things that we believe are the character and the nature of God, and just wanting to reflect something of that into the world. So yeah, in your job, if you really didn't like it and you didn't enjoy it, how could you reflect something of the nature of God? So maybe it's through being generous, through being kind, through being gracious, through kind of maybe not embarrassing, like maybe if you disagree with somebody, not calling them out in public, but saying to them, oh, hey, like, can we just chat about this? And actually the way that you respond to people, the way that you treat people, they're going to look at you, but they're also going to look beyond you, because they're going to be like, why do you do that? Why do you think differently? Why are you behaving differently? When everybody else would just call me out in front of everyone, or tell me how wrong I am, or be really angry at me. Why are you showing me grace? Or why are you being generous? Why are you being kind? And I think as human beings, we do a lot of stuff that is self-serving, because we're like, oh, I want to look good, whatever.
Sure.
But I think deep down, people actually do look beyond.
Yeah.
Because that kind of stuff doesn't last. If it's not authentic, it doesn't last. Like someone will be nice one day and mean the next.
Yeah.
But actually, if it comes from a good, like true, authentic place, people will look beyond that and they'll see something of God in you. And I just think if all of us were able to kind of implement these kinds of principles in our life, just imagine how incredible the world would be. And it still wouldn't be perfect. Absolutely wouldn't be perfect. But I think there would be so much better stuff that comes from the world.
I can see that as like the next 30-day challenge. Like, just do this for 30 days and see how your life changes. And if you don't want to do it after that, that's totally fine. And everyone's like...
But it's so true, because so much of what you said there, obviously from your perspective, you know, you've learned about it from your faith, but you know, I don't know how many people can argue with that, like the benefits of being a bit more gracious, a bit kinder, a bit more forgiving. Like when you actually even take it outside the context of faith, it's like we would be so much better as humans if we all could just be a little bit more like that. So that, I think, hopefully will be the takeaway for a lot of people listening, is that we can maybe just try and implement like a little bit more kindness, or a little bit more godlike character in every day.
Yes, but less judgment. I think that's the problem that people have with religion, is that there is so much judgment, and that really sucks, because I think that really puts people off.
Do you think that the focus on judgment that people perceive there to be in Christianity and in a lot of faiths generally is again something that we have maybe got wrong a little bit?
To be honest, I don't think people have got it wrong. I think it can be very judgmental. And I think, historically, it has been very judgmental. I wouldn't say people have got it wrong. I think people are fearful of being judged, because judgment brings shame, and judgment makes you feel pushed out or outcast, and nobody wants to feel like that. I don't think the work really needs to be done for the individuals outside of faith or religion who are feeling like judgment is a thing. I don't think it's their job to change that or to change their perspective. I think actually the work should be done from within kind of Christian culture or religious culture, to think, why do people view it in this way? In what ways have we been judgmental? And be really honest about that, and just be realistic about history and realistic about the things that have happened through religion and what religion has pushed that has made people feel that way. Because I don't think people feel that way for no reason. But I don't think it's right, and I don't think it's what Jesus wants of us. I think we're meant to be loving and gracious and encourage one another, accept people as they are. So for me, that's my faith. That's what I carry. So it does make me sad when people hear that I've got a faith and they're like, oh, she must be really judgmental, because I'm like, no, I'm not. But I totally respect and understand why they would feel that way. But I think that's why you do everything through relationship, and you don't need to push your religion on anyone. You don't need to push your faith on anyone. You just love them as they are. You build friendship, relationship, and yeah, I think people see for themselves.
Well, I am totally and utterly inspired. And for anyone who's listened and also wants to see much more of you and the work you do, where can they find you?
So my platform that I run is called Girl Got Faith. So it's just at Girl Got Faith. It's predominantly for teenagers and young women who are exploring faith. Or you can find me, just Emma Borquaye, on Instagram. It's quite hard to spell my surname, but I guess you can work it out.
In the show notes.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh, well, thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having me.